We're going to be learning how to draw flats, and we're going to be drawing them by hand with some markers and tracing paper and all kinds of good stuff. Couple simple ones to start. We're going to do a straight skirt and then like a man style t-shirt. So just to get started, I've got my thin liner pens. These are those Micron pens, but you might have a different liner pen. I usually have one that's a little thicker, so maybe I'll do this whole thing with the 05 pen and do details with this pen that says 005, little stitches and things like that. You need a smaller pen. I've also got a pencil. I like mechanical pencils. You don't want to use too soft of a pencil to do this because it'll smudge around. So I think these kind of mechanical pencils are really good for drawing flats. I've also got this curved ruler. You might also have some like little French curve things, which are probably better than using this big giant ruler. Hang on one second. I've also got something called a see-through ruler. Mine's not super see-through because I have paint all over it, but you can probably see it's got like a little grid that kind of allows you to know that you're drawing straight lines at 90-degree angles. I like to do my flats on plain copy paper. Some people like to use marker paper. This is a little more economical to use the copy paper, and it works just fine. And we're also going to be using some tracing paper to transfer things back and forth. I have what's called a croquis here, which you're going to get a copy of, and this is something that is sort of in the same proportions as a person. It's not like what you'd use for an illustration, which would be more stretched out. So we're going to use this croquis, and I'm going to sort of pull my computer screen down so you can see what I'm doing, only it'll be a little bit upside down, but hopefully you can see the process we go through. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down my croquis. Here we go, here we go. On my desk, I have a couple pieces of paper underneath it, just so my drawing surface is nice and flat. And I'm going to take my tracing paper and put that over the croquis. Now, you might want to tape this down with some masking tape. You want to definitely make sure you use tape that can be easily removed. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some tape down. I'm making sure this is straight here too. I hope you guys can see this okay. So I'm just going to tape over everything so it can't move around. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to trace, there's a straight line going down the middle of the person here. Her name is Sybil. That's what it says on the paper. So I'm going to take my see-through ruler and trace exactly down that line. I'm not going to press too hard. I wouldn't be pressing too hard during any of this anyway, but this is definitely a line that's going to be erased. So I'm just going to trace this a little guideline. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to start by drawing a t-shirt, just like a man-shaped, plain t-shirt, and we're only going to draw half of it on this one side, and then we're going to fold it in half and trace it again so it's nice and symmetrical. So there is a little curved line. I don't know if you can see it here at the neckline. I'm going to say that my shirt goes just a little bit below that. So I'm going to follow that. This is really small, guys, so you might not even be able to use your curve for something this small. And if you're having problems, go ahead and enlarge this croquis on a photocopier. So I just drew a little curve there, and now you see her shoulders curved, but your t-shirt shoulders aren't. And you've got to look at clothes to kind of tell that. So I'm going to do like a little angle here, and that's kind of my shoulder seam there. Now there's also a little band for a collar on a t-shirt, so I'm just going to draw a line really close to this other line. And it's okay if you aren't able to draw these curves as nicely. I've been practicing a lot, so you'll have maybe some French curves or things you can use. Now I'm going to draw a seam that would be called the armhole seam. So it's going to start out coming straight down and kind of curve out like that. And now I'm going to draw the sleeve. So those are straight lines. I feel okay not to use a ruler. Some of you guys you know, might really need to use a ruler for your straight lines, and that's fine. I'm going to use my ruler here. After I said that, I didn't want to jinx myself. I'm just going to go back into the armhole and just kind of clean it up. Now, I'm drawing all this just from my mind. I'm going to give you guys some pictures to use, so don't worry, because I'm just showing you actually how to do the techniques. Now, let's take our ruler, and we're going to just draw straight down like it's a man's t-shirt and really boxy, not like a really fitted woman's t-shirt. And I'm just going to draw straight down. I can make sure my line is straight by aligning one of these lines up with that center line that we traced. So I'm just going to draw straight down, and let's say it hits, you know, sort of midway down the hip here. So I'd want to make sure that this line here was exactly parallel to the center line, so that way I know I have a 90-degree angle, because your hems on the bottom of shirts and things like that usually aren't curved. And I'm just going to draw it to the center here. Now there's usually little stitching around here and on this sleeve and the bottom hem. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just worry about getting this other side drawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this tracing paper. Oh, I did forget one thing, of course. You would see the back collar of the shirt. So I'm just going to do a slightly curved line here, and that would be the back collar of the shirt. Okay? Now, I'm going to pick up my tracing paper, and I'm going to fold it exactly on this center line. No cheating. You got to do it exactly, or your shirt's going to be crooked. So here I go. Easier said than done. So now I've got a shirt that I can trace on the other side. You probably can't see that. You just have to take my word. So I'm going to trace this, turn it over to the blank side where you can still see through, and to help me out, I'm going to put some white paper under it, and I'm going to go ahead and trace. And I'm just going to start with this back neck curve that I almost forgot here, pencil in the neck. Now, when you're tracing it like this, it's going to help you keep the thing really symmetrical. If I just drew the whole thing on that one sheet, I'd probably make something a little crooked. I mean, it's not going to be completely perfect because, you know, it's not done on a computer. You're doing this by hand, but we need to try to do our best. So I'm going to go in here and use my ruler for the straight seam down, and I'm going to do one across here. Now, usually you have to fix up these lines that go across the neckline and everything. We'll fix them up a little bit. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to, you probably can't see, but it looks a little crooked and choppy in the middle, so I'm just going to smooth those things out. And do the same with this bottom hem, but the other stuff is fine. So now we're going to transfer this to the paper that we want to use, you know, our final version with a marker. You have a couple options. If you're feeling really confident with doing this, you could just put this copy paper over your tracing paper. You might need to use a window or a light box, and you could trace this with markers. And I really strongly suggest when you're doing your marker tracing that you use your ruler and your curves. Now, starting out, you might want to actually not just go right in with marker right away. You might want to actually use pencil because you're still kind of getting used to what you're doing. So I'm going to start tracing this with pencil, and then I'll go over it in marker like you might when you're starting out. And it's probably a good idea to tape this down again because it's going to want to move around. And I don't have my light box on because I don't know how to do movies and light boxes and camera angles, as you guys can all tell. So I can barely see this, and I know you can't see it at all, but if you were using even a window or something, you know, you'd probably be able to see this just fine. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to trace over what I've already drawn one more time. I'm not sure if my computer just shut off. I'm sorry about that. And you can kind of just do an idea, like a rough idea, and then go back in with your curves and fix it. Messed up there a little bit. I'm going to bring in the ruler. You might want to use a ruler the whole time on your very straight edges, but I definitely need it here on these long straight side seams. Okay. Now I'm just going to clean up the little kind of messes I made here. And I'm going to untape it because I just cannot draw this neckline without turning it sideways. Okay, so now, as you might or might not be able to see, I've got this penciled in onto the paper I want to use for my final product. So now what I want to do is I want to take markers and marker it in. So like I said, I like to use this 05 micron pen, but you might have another pen or just like to do something else. I like these because they don't really bleed a lot and they're just a little bit smoother to work with. Now this is when I'm really going to want to use my straight edge and everything like that. So here I go. Don't press hard. Don't be nervous. Just smoother and less nervous you are, the better your lines are going to be. You might have a curve here. I don't have a curve that's small enough for this, so I'm just going to go for it. And now I'm going to use my ruler. And you got to be careful with your ruler not to smudge, okay? And it might take some practice to make sure you're drawing exactly where you want to be. And you got to be careful not to draw too far down, so you don't want the lines sticking out. So on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I did a shoulder seam. Now I'm going to do this armhole. I'm going to take the side seam down. You want to make sure the marker's not wet and you're not dragging your ruler through it because you're going to smudge. And did I go too far? Okay. And I'm going to draw my sleeves in here. I probably should have used a ruler on the other sleeve. Here I will for this one. Look a little straighter. And I have to turn this sideways to do the neck. And for the back neck seam, I usually like to use a little bit smaller marker. That's just me. Not the skinny 005, but I might use like this 002. I just like to make things in the back look like they're smaller somehow. Okay. Now the only thing left to do is there's some stitching that you might see at these hems here. And I'm going to do that with that skinny marker. I wouldn't even bother doing this kind of stuff if you don't have a very thin marker because it's just going to look really blobby and terrible. So you could use a ruler to do this stitching, or you could try to freehand it. It's kind of like a small area. My dog is crying outside. I hope you guys can't hear him. So I'm just going to do this little stitching here. Kind of right at the edge. And just going to keep them single rows of stitching for now, just because we're still learning. Now, your last step would be waiting a couple seconds here, and then you'd want to erase your pencil marks. You just want to wait a second so it's not wet. I always like to test my eraser because sometimes they make everything dirty, actually, instead of cleaning. And I'll just go in and erase my pencil lines. And then there you have it. You have your flat sketch of the t-shirt. So when you go to put this on your board for your final project, you could cut it out in a square shape, or you could use an X-Acto knife and scissor combination and kind of cut right out around it, just outside the outline. And that one takes a lot longer and a lot more work, but it does look a little neater. So there is just kind of like a men's style boxy t-shirt. And just one more one real quick so you can actually see the curve. So I'm going to bring out Sybil here. I'm going to put Sybil back down. And I'm going to get some tracing paper. I'm actually going to recycle this one that I used with a t-shirt here. I'll just put this over Sybil. And I'm going to tape down. Tape down Sybil here. And I'm going to do the same exact idea that I did before, where I trace the center line down. Only I'm going to extend it a little bit more because it's not very far down. We're just going to do like a straight skirt. Nothing to it. So I'm going to draw a straight line down, and that's going to be where I fold. I'm just going to draw on one side of Sybil. Now, this skirt front waist is usually straight across, so I'm going to use the center line of my ruler here to make sure I'm going straight across. And here I go. Here we go. Now, there's probably a waist seam in the skirt that I'm imagining, so I'll do a waist seam here. So I'm just going to draw slightly further down. Now, there's like a little hip curve here. I can either kind of try to trace that on Sybil because it's a straight skirt, or you can try to use your curve ruler to find a similar angle. And that is going to be challenging the space that I'm in, but we're going to do it. We're going to make it work here. And this is exactly how you do it. You kind of move it around so you feel like you have a kind of a good match. And you definitely want to use this curve when you're doing your markers and everything. Now I stopped about where, you know, the hips stop, and if you have a straight skirt, it's just going to come straight down. A pencil skirt might angle in, but the skirt that I'm imagining is going to come straight down. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to just draw straight down from this line. And you can kind of blend that in there when you do your marker. Now the skirt is going to go straight across to come back in. Sybil has a very fashionable skirt. And usually there's something called darts. Now they might be in the back of a skirt. We can talk more about darts later, but if you had a dart, it would maybe be something like this, just a little straight line. So same thing. We're going to take this tracing paper away. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm going to fold this in half exactly on my line so I can draw the other side. So I was really naughty and didn't use the ruler a lot last time, and I kind of paid the price because some of it looked a little sloppy. So I'm going to use my ruler so I can be a better example. Now here I could kind of try to trace or get my curve ruler to be at the angle. Trying not to break everything on my desk in the process. Can't promise you though. So I found kind of a similar curve. And then I stop just like I did last time, and I'm going to take a straight line down. I think my computer shut off. I don't know how this works. I've never done a movie before, guys, so just take it easy on me here. Okay, and it's kind of looks a little messy and you can't tell, but you just kind of blend it in a little. And I'm going to take my line straight across. Okay, same thing, open it up. And it might need a little, actually it doesn't look too bad, but you can take your ruler across these lines here to straighten them out. And I forgot to put my dart on when I had this folded in half, so I'm going to trace my dart. So there we have it. This is a straight skirt. Now I'm going to go ahead and marker it in. So I'm going to put some paper underneath it. And I'm going to trace this really quickly. This time, just to save time, because this is the world's longest movie, I'm going to do this with marker, just directly over it. And I'm just going to be very careful. You guys might want to keep doing pencil and then tracing. So I can barely see it, as you probably can barely see it either. And I'm going to take my number 05 micron pen. And I'm going to, boy, I really can't see this. We'll see how this one turns out. And let's do some straight lines across. It takes a lot of practice not to kind of like overdraw and to have these lines smooth, you know, like to draw past this line you're going by. So don't worry if you don't have it perfect. And just remember, you're not a computer, so all you can do is your best. Oh, these little darts. I don't know if I'll be able to see them. So I'm going to take a narrower pen, and I'm going to try to hope I see these darts. Okay, so I wait 1 second, and I'm going to erase if there's any smudges or anything on there from my little pencil hands. So what we've done here, you can see, we've done just a straight, simple pencil skirt. So those are kind of the steps that you need to take to start using your markers and things like that to draw flats.